Hopefully that's better, y'all.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old Union has come in here to dwell.
The largest union talk radio program in the South. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. Folks, we got a great program ready for you today, and the phones are open if you'd like to give us a call. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. In the first half of the program, we're going to be talking to a social worker from North Carolina who was part of a union campaign at which some of these union-busting consultants were hired. So we're going to be talking to her about her experience there. I think if we've got time, we're going to be talking about some firefighters in I think that situation was also in North Carolina, South Carolina, where a firefighter was upset about a policy and emailed his city councilor, and his superiors tried to discipline him for, quote, violating the chain of command, which was nuts, and the firefighters union kicked the superiors around a little bit and beat them. So really excited to take a look at that story. And then we got a whole second half of the program lined up for you after that. We're going to be talking to some people from one of the biggest YouTube channels on YouTube about why they are forming a union. Really exciting stuff. We're going to start in Alabama, though. We've got Eddie Mitchell calling in from the Ironworkers Local 477 to talk to us about a couple of bills that his union is tracking and concerned about. Eddie, welcome to the program. Thanks for making the time to call in.
Good morning, and thank you guys for having me on again.
Yeah, brother. Good morning. Hope you're doing well. SB 91 was the first bill that we were talking about. Can you tell us what that bill is and what does it do?
It weakens the regional cooperation by allowing counties or cities to withdraw from economic development authorities and taking funding with them. It creates uncertainty for job growth by making long-term agreements less stable for investors and employers. It reduces public accountability when major financial decisions are made without a broader public involvement. This is less and less input from the community, and I think economic development works best when communities work together, not when we fight over resources.
And I think that one of the big things that people are concerned about here is that if you've got a region, you are the ironworkers are headquartered in Northwest Alabama, so I know that that's kind of what y'all are looking at. If you've got one of these bigger counties that is in a regional economic development sort of organization, and they pull out their funds and their resources, you could see economic development really start to dry up in some of the smaller counties that may not have as much money and as many resources in that county, but the smaller county is contributing in a lot of ways to the bigger county's resources. And so having these larger regional organizations for economic development is important for, fairness and the stability of the region. Am I kind of accurately understanding the concern?
You're exactly right. Jacob, this isn't a party issue, and this isn't a union issue. This is an Alabama issue. This is people are going to have kids that are going to work at one of these facilities that the economic development has recruited. Without these facilities, this is less jobs for people that work here. This does not benefit any Alabamians.
And so there's real concern here by your union that by siphoning off and kind of sectioning off different parts of a region and by allowing some of the bigger counties or municipalities in a region to go it alone and leave their smaller neighbors behind, that it could damage and potentially kill some projects that are already in the works. Are there any projects that y'all are tracking right now that you think could be endangered by this legislation?
There are. I don't think I'm allowed to disclose which projects just because of my affiliation with the local economic development board in North Alabama. But yeah, there's a project that they're looking at that it will definitely kill.
And the person who introduced this legislation, it's in the Senate right now. Is there a House counterpart at this point?
Not that I'm aware of. But that person also introduced the other bill that we need to talk about.
And so what does Senator Melson is the one who introduced this legislation? What does he say? Like, what is his argument? Why does he think this would be good for Alabama?
I haven't spoke directly to him, so all I've got is, third-party information. But from what I've heard is they're saying that Lauderdale County did not get the fair share of projects based on their input to the economic development, which I can't see that being realistic at all. We've had several projects go on in Lauderdale County, but this was something that was introduced last year and it was killed at the House level, but now that it's coming from the Senate level, it's it's a little bit more of an uphill battle, and that's why I reached out yesterday, sending you guys the link to stop this.
And so, what should people do to let their representatives know that they don't want to see this pass?
They should call them, send them emails, but I definitely call them and tell them vote no on Senate Bill 91. It just came out of committee. We're expecting it to be on the Senate floor Tuesday or Thursday, and
oh wow,
I feel like if we can get enough people to call and it's not like a 16-page bill that like the next one, but it's something that anybody can read and understand. But nobody can explain to me the benefit of it.
Like you said, there's another bill that you wanted to talk about, SB 288 in Alabama. What does that one do?
It's real similar. It reduces the input by allowing certain boards to appoint their own successors, which is crazy to me. But then it expands the spending authority through cooperative purchasing programs that may reduce local scrutiny. It may redirect tax revenues away from local governments, impacting schools, infrastructure, public safety. I think public boards should answer to the public and operate with strong checks and balances. But they coincide together. I feel like you could appoint your own group and step away from the economic development. And then you've got a whole nother system that operates similar to economic development, but without any checks and balances or any input from the community. It's at that point. I think this is a definition of good old boy system.
Right. And so
nobody likes the good old boy. Nobody likes the good old boy system unless they're a part of it.
Right. And so SB 288, if I'm understanding correctly, the primary concern about what it does is that it allows the board of directors for like public boards and public authorities, which are created by, state law or municipal ordinance. I've actually been thinking about this a little bit in Huntsville with the healthcare authority. And so what this would do is allow the people who are on that board to appoint their successors rather than the locality or the municipality, which typically appoints people to these boards. Is that right?
Correct. And I think it's geared mostly toward the Department of Agriculture, but I'm sure it can be spun in other ways. And then reading onto it, it's got some things saying that the people need to be from the counties that they're in, but it also opens the door for some at-large members that do not have to be from anywhere close. And that's that's another stab in the eye. We need people who live here making decisions on what affects people who live here, not somebody that lives over there.
All right. Well, Eddie Mitchell, member of the Ironworkers Local 477, thank you so much for taking the time to call in. And again, the Ironworkers are encouraging people to let their senators know that they should not support SB 91 and 288. Is there anything else that you wanted to say before we let you go, brother? All right. Appreciate that call. Adam, I don't know if you had any thoughts on that before we went to our next segment.
Just that it's always important to reach out to your lawmakers, especially right before a vote. You mentioned it's already passed committee. And so that means, your senator, whoever they are, whatever committee they're on, they're going to be facing this for a vote. So that's a good opportunity to reach out and let them know how you feel about it.
Absolutely. Have we got our next guest in the Zoom? All right. Debbie Smith is the campaign director for Cover Alabama. Debbie, welcome back to the program. I believe that you've been on before. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, it's been a minute, but I'm excited to be here again.
Can you remind us what Cover Alabama is?
Yeah, sure. Well, the official line is the Cover Alabama Coalition is a nonpartisan alliance of 130 community partners, consumer groups, businesses, healthcare providers, and faith groups advocating for the state of Alabama to provide quality, affordable health coverage to its residents and implement a sustainable healthcare system. That's the official line. So really, it's just a bunch of groups coming together to advocate for better healthcare and more people to have access to healthcare in Alabama. So it consists of groups like Alabama Arise, which is who I work with, along with like the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network, American Heart Association, United Women of Color, Black Voters Matter, really a wide variety group of folks that are advocating for better healthcare in Alabama.
Y'all have an advocacy day at the State House on March 10th. Can you talk about what your goals are and why folks should come out?
Yeah, well, I think anybody who's been paying attention to the news or just living life knows that the state of healthcare in Alabama and the United States is just pretty terrible, right? There's a lot of people who just don't have access to any type of health insurance at all. And there's a lot of people who are underinsured, and just people who can't afford their medical bills. So there's a lot of frustration around our healthcare system right now. And Advocacy Day, Cover Alabama Advocacy Day, is your opportunity to come to the State House and talk to lawmakers about what you want to see changed in our healthcare system. One goal that we'll be advocating for, of course, is Medicaid expansion, which would cover an additional around 200,000 Alabamians with health coverage who haven't had it before. But we'll also be talking about improving the Medicaid program, as well as discussing some of our disappointments that we've seen over the years with healthcare and some of the things that have come down from the federal government.
Appreciate that, Debbie, and definitely encourage folks to go on down to the State House on the 10th if you can. It's a great opportunity. But, and you mentioned a few of the policies. And before we get into some of those, I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about the lack of adequate health care in the state. How does that impact individuals and their families and really all of us in the broader community and economy? And how does Alabama rank, compared to other states in the country when it comes to healthcare access?
Yeah. Well, I think the most important thing to remember when I'm talking to people about healthcare and the importance of people having health coverage is that this isn't just a one-sum game. Like if a lot of people do not have access to health coverage, it impacts our whole communities, but also, of course, the individuals who don't have it. Health insurance can be the difference between life and death. That's not an exaggeration. We've seen an adult age out of Medicaid and not being able to have access to his insulin anymore, and died as a result of not having Medicaid coverage and not being able to afford his insulin. And there's lots of incidents where people who didn't have access to their health coverage, passed away because they didn't have access to that Medicaid coverage. But it's not just because of that. It's also, it has to do with people's quality of life, being able to take that anxiety medication or being able to take their blood pressure medication, just being able to stay healthy and be able to go to work is so important for just individuals. But, a few things happen where, small health problems can turn into big ones. If you can't afford your checkup or your medicine, something like high blood pressure or asthma can get worse until it becomes an emergency. And then families face tough choices. People end up deciding between paying for medicine or paying for groceries, rent, gas. And medical bills are one of the biggest reasons that families fall into debt, of course. And then people miss work at school. So that affects the whole community, right? Because how much money you get at your school depends on people's attendance. And then overall for the community, it's a big problem for the economy as well, because hospitals can really struggle when there aren't enough insured people in the community. They take on what's called uncompensated care costs when people who don't have health insurance show up in the ER. And that can be a real problem with keeping their hospitals open. And businesses feel it too. Like a less healthy workforce means lower productivity and more sick days, and then higher costs for employers overall. And then communities just overall lose money. When people are too sick to work or have to quit their jobs to care for sick family members, the local economies shrink. So it's really important to remember that, yes, we want people to have healthcare because they deserve it, and because people need to stay healthy. But also for the community as a whole to keep our hospitals open and keep the local workforce thriving. It's important to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the one thing that always sticks with me in this healthcare conversation is that in the labor movement, we talk about an injury to one as an injury to all.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the healthcare landscape, that really resonates, right? Because as you described, when our neighbors don't have healthcare, that absolutely impacts us too.
Yes.
And so it really is a rough situation right now. We've been tracking the fight over the Affordable Care Act subsidies. And of course, Jacob has used your fact sheet a lot on the show, so we really appreciate that. But could you just kind of tell us where do things stand right now with the ACA subsidies and what's been the impact so far that we can tell?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure since you've been discussing this a lot on the show, your listeners probably already know, but just as a reminder, these ACA subsidies, they're extra subsidies that passed in 2021 to make health insurance a little bit more affordable for people who were buying health insurance through healthcare.gov. They renewed them at one time in Congress and then another, and then they were set to expire on December 31st, 2025. And unfortunately, when they expired on December 31st, that was it. They have not been renewed by Congress, even though they had multiple opportunities to do so, even though we've been calling on them, all of 2025 and into 2026 to renew the tax credits. Congress didn't end up not doing it. There was some momentum at the beginning of January. The House, in a bipartisan bill, passed a 3-year extension of the subsidies. But unfortunately, it did not make it over to the Senate. And then a lot of other things were happening in the country around that time as well. So a lot of attention got directed towards other things, and the tax credits essentially the argument has pretty much died at this point.
And so, where does that leave folks here in Alabama? I'm presuming that we've had a good many people who have either seen their healthcare go up a whole lot, or it's going to go up soon. And I'm sure there's some people who maybe have been priced out of their plans or go into cheaper plans. And what are some of the impacts you've heard so far from this expiration?
Yeah, there's multiple impacts. So there's some folks that have just dropped coverage altogether. We got a first look at enrollment numbers at the end of January from the Centers of Medicaid and Medicare Services. And they showed that there was already a 20,000 people enrollment drop for the state of Alabama for 2026 healthcare.gov plans. We think that that's probably an underestimate of how many people are probably dropping coverage, because at that point, it's possible that some people may have been automatically re-enrolled, or maybe they haven't paid their first month's health insurance yet at that point. So that was really a preliminary number that 20,000 people have lost coverage. So we won't really know the full number probably until the summertime, when people have had a chance to effectuate their coverage or pay for their bills and see how many people actually keep their coverage. And we have heard examples of people just saying, I can't afford this anymore. Like my premium went from $800 a month to $600 a month. Or we had a case of a yoga instructor. Her premium went from $30 a month to $300 a month. And that's a huge increase. For most people, though, their premiums doubled, tripled, quadrupled. And when you're not planning for that, or who can really afford that kind of bump in their health insurance premiums going up? Not me. I know I couldn't afford that. I probably have to drop coverage. The other thing is that it's possible that some people, instead of dropping their coverage altogether, just dropped to like a lower value plan. So maybe they had a $400 a month premium with a $2,000 deductible. Now they're going to $350 a month premium, but like with a $10,000 deductible, right? So there's a lot of people that we know that we've talked to personally who dropped to just a lower quality tier of health insurance, which is pretty risky. If you actually do end up needing that healthcare, $10,000 is quite a deductible that you have to meet in order to start receiving your healthcare, along with higher copays. So yeah, I'm afraid we won't really know the true impact for a few months, but we are already seeing, you know, again, like people losing their coverage, dropping their coverage, or going to lower quality coverage, which again can impact the whole healthcare system, because the people who enroll in the lower quality plans might end up with some uncompensated care costs as well.
Right, absolutely. I mean, that's what was on my mind is you're going to have people who are less healthy, right? Because they're getting less preventative care, less routine care. And then you're going to have more medical debt. You're going to have more people going into debt. Medical debt's already a huge problem. You know, here in Alabama and elsewhere, it's one of the leading causes of debt for so many families. So that's a really big concern. And, you know, I know you mentioned Medicaid expansion earlier. There's been some developments with the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act, impacting not just Medicaid expansion, but you know, Medicaid and healthcare as a whole. So I'm wondering, could you just remind us what are some of the impacts that we're seeing from that bill when it comes to both Medicaid expansion and just you know healthcare in Alabama?
Yeah. Well, nationwide, you may have heard, you know, that hundreds of thousands of people, millions even, were going to lose their coverage. In Alabama, it's a little bit of a different story because we already have like one of the most bare bones Medicaid programs in the country, right? We have about 1 million people who are enrolled in Medicaid coverage right now, and 50% of those are children. The other half are adults who are on disability, seniors who might have Medicaid and Medicare together, pregnant women, and then a very small group of individuals who may not have a disability and they qualify for Medicaid based on their income and having a child in the household. So we call this the parent and caretaker relative category. But in order to qualify for this type of health coverage, which is, again, this is the only way an adult in Alabama can get Medicaid without a disability, you have to make less than $400 a month in order to qualify
Wow.
for this type of coverage. If you don't have a disability or something like that, there's different income ranges for that. But if you're a healthy working adult, then you have to make less than $400 a month, which is ridiculous. I think y'all can do the math. That's like 10 hours of work. So a week. So really ridiculous. And on the other end of the perspective, it's you have to make $2,200 a month for a family of 3 in order to qualify for healthcare.gov subsidies. So if you're in that range of making between $400 and $2,200 a month, if you're in between that range, you have no option for health insurance coverage right now in the state of Alabama. And that's what we've been trying to fix with Medicaid expansion. If we were to expand Medicaid, it would cover those people who are in that insurance gap, which is, again, about around 200,000 people. But unfortunately, it got a little bit harder to do. Under the HR1, the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, there were some incentives for the state of Alabama to expand our Medicaid program, help us pay for probably at least the first 2 years of Medicaid expansion. Under the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, those incentives were taken away. So the state of Alabama would need to find the money in order to pay for the upfront cost of Medicaid expansion now. Along with work requirements have been added to Medicaid expansion nationwide. Can't stand that. Typically, people would need to work at least 20 hours a week in order to qualify for Medicaid coverage. And that would be the case if we expanded Medicaid here in Alabama. The problem with that is not so much that people aren't working. It's that they're having trouble proving that they're working. You know, we already saw Arkansas did work requirements and people had a lot of trouble with their computer system just uploading their information into the system to prove that they were working. So there was most of the people who ended up losing coverage in Arkansas under work requirements were actually still eligible, but they just had so much trouble with the work reporting requirements of it, the red tape, the bureaucracy of having to prove that they were working, that they ended up losing health coverage as a result. But at the same time, work requirements have also been a sticking point of like why conservatives said that they might not want to expand Medicaid, right? So Mississippi came really, really close to expanding their Medicaid program a couple of years ago through the legislature. And it ended up, the bill ended up dying like on the last day of the legislative session because they could not agree to, they did not want to add work requirements to the program. You know, hindsight's 2020. So now that it's required under law because of the so-called big, beautiful bill, that may actually, you know, find some compromise in order to get Medicaid expansion done in some of these states that have been holdouts.
Right.
But while we hate it, it also could bring more people to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you're going to keep pushing, and Cover Alabama is going to keep pushing to improve healthcare in the state and expand healthcare for more folks. And of course, as a union talk show, we're always going to remind folks you can organize in your workplace and try to win healthcare as part of a collective bargaining agreement. That is always a good pathway to pursue. And so, Debbie, you've got the Cover Alabama Advocacy Day on the 10th. How do folks sign up?
Yes, please go to coveralabama.org/2026 Advocacy Day. There you will find all the information that you need to register. It's going to be a great day. We have some national experts coming in from Families USA to help us explain and understand Medicaid expansion under the new federal law. And we'll also have lots of time to, network, meet with like-minded people, and speak up for healthcare to lawmakers. So I really hope that y'all can join us.
Thank you
Debbie
so much,
Smith,
Debbie.
Campaign Director for Cover Alabama. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. advocacy.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org. Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old Union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. From the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. Today on the program, we just finished talking to a couple of folks from Alabama about some bills that are probably bad in the Alabama legislature and about healthcare. We're about to be talking to a social worker from North Carolina about her union campaign and more. So make sure you stay tuned, folks. If you'd like to call in, you can do that at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also send us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, tvlr.fm. But we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at The Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners, so if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or make a one-time donation, you can go to patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report or tvlr.fm/donate. We've got a bunch of really cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store. And finally, if you're a member of a union, then please think about getting your local, your district's council, or your international to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that.
Hey, y'all. Let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We want to welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, WMSP, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. And we are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out at laborradionetwork.org. As most of you know, we are not media professionals, just a few diehard unionists who want to amplify the voices of the working class in the American South. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in, whether you're a loyal fan or a first-time listener. We appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Every week in the South, workers organize new unions, they bargain new contracts, they fight for good legislation and against bad legislation, and they put the boss in their place. Here are all the stories that we could find from February 20th to the 27th. In organizing, 35 workers in 2 bargaining units have gone public with their union campaigns. 849 workers across 12 bargaining units unionized. 53 workers across 2 bargaining units withdrew their petition for a union election, and 138 workers across 4 bargaining units voted against unionization. In new campaigns, 5 workers at Howard's Mechanical in Amarillo, Texas, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Association of Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers, SMART Local 49, and the employer filed a petition to hold a union election after a majority of the 30 workers at Zenith Logistics in Louisville, Kentucky, demonstrated support for unionization with the Teamsters, Local 89. In election results, 9 workers at Daimler Coaches North America in Jacksonville, Florida, voted 7-2 in favor of unionization with the United Auto Workers, UAW. 65 workers at the International Brotherhood of Teamsters in Washington, D.C., voted 36-18 in favor of unionization with the IBT Staff Council. 531 security guards at Paragon Professional Services and Asset Protection and Security Services as joint employers in El Paso, Texas, voted 121-56 in favor of unionization with the Federal Contract Guards of America. 75 workers at 4 Starbucks locations in Houston, Texas, Springfield, Missouri, Reston, Virginia, and Blytheville, Arkansas, voted in favor of unionization with Starbucks Workers United by a total margin of 52-16. 60 workers at 3 other Starbucks locations in Radcliffe, Kentucky, and Houston, Texas, voted against unionization by a total margin of 24-33. 73 workers at American Medical Response Incorporated in Temple, Texas, voted 31-27 against unionization with the Communication Workers of America, CWA. In grievances, unfair labor practices, and court cases, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled against the American Federation of Government Employees, lifting an injunction on the Trump administration, allowing them to terminate collective bargaining agreements with AFGE, but that was only on that ruling was made on whether or not to have an injunction as the case plays out. It was not a ruling on the merits, and AFGE is going to continue to fight what they call an illegal executive order banning collective bargaining rights for federal workers. In strikes and bargaining updates, multiple Teamsters bargaining units across the South ratified new contracts. Members of Local 528 in Atlanta, Georgia at Avis Car Rental ratified a new 3-year contract that the union says contains, quote, significant wage increases, seniority for part-timers, and time and a half on holidays, and more. 245 members of Local 6 in St. Louis, Missouri at Metal Container Corporation, a subsidiary of Anheuser-Busch, also ratified a new agreement. In a press release, the Teamsters said this 5-year contract includes raises of up to 23%, along with more paid time off and no added health care costs. The attack on federal unions just escalated. Last Friday, IRS Chief Human Capital Officer Alex Queskin announced that the agency is unilaterally terminating its collective bargaining agreement with the National Treasury Employees Union, NTEU. Queskin claimed this rollback, driven by a 2025 executive order, helps them operate, quote, as one IRS, stating the agency will cancel all negotiations and arbitration hearings. But the union is holding the line. NTEU President Doreen Greenwald told the IRS that the contract remains lawfully in effect, pointing out that the Federal Labor Relations Authority has not revoked their certification. This comes right after the NTEU filed a massive grievance because the IRS forced 1,000 back office employees into frontline roles with zero experience. In political and legislative updates, President Trump said we are in a golden age in his State of the Union address, but across the labor movement, the verdict is in. That is just not true. AFL-CIO President Liz Shuler called the speech a fever dream, divorced from reality, and noted that while costs for groceries and housing soar, the administration is prioritizing billionaire tax cuts over working families. The American Federation of Teachers, AFT, highlighted the lack of empathy. President Randy Weingarten noted that for anybody struggling with child care or health care costs, the speech made one thing clear: you don't matter. The National Education Association slammed the finger-pointing and scapegoating, specifically condemning the fear caused by ICE raids in schools and the diversion of funds away from public education. The Office and Professional Employees International Union, OPEIU, labeled the, quote, golden age narrative pure fantasy, pointing to stripped bargaining rights and economic policies that caused surging prices. Unions say the system is rigged and Trump isn't helping. Imagine an election where anybody who stays home is automatically counted as voting against you. That's exactly what Florida's Senate Bill 1296 would do to public sector unions. The legislation builds on previous anti-union legislation aimed at killing Florida's public sector labor movement. Jordan Scott of the Northwest Florida Federation of Labor noted in public hearings that this standard does not exist in any other Democratic election. Most politicians in office today would never be able to get elected themselves because so few get a majority of the total number of eligible voters in their district, including, it's worth noting, the President of the United States. The bill does include a massive carve-out, however. It exempts police and firefighters. Bill sponsor Senator Jonathan Martin defended this double standard, arguing that law enforcement faces unique job stresses and lawsuits that require union protection. But the real reason is obviously just that this legislation is meant to harm political opponents of Republicans. The official Florida Senate staff analysis actually warned that creating two classes of public employees could violate equal protection and constitutional collective bargaining rights. Citing this analysis, State Senator LaVon Bracey Davis bluntly slammed the legislation as an unconstitutional train wreck. Frontline workers also are upset about this double standard and the implication that their jobs don't have unique stresses. Transport Workers Union bus operator Chantrell Jackson and utility worker Eddie Carter both testified at the Capitol, arguing their essential, life-saving work deserves the exact same union protections as first responders. In internal union affairs, Georgia machinists just made and recognized history. The International Association of Machinists, IAM, has officially rechartered the Waycross, Georgia Local 625 as Local 1. This action reclaims a title for the local union that dates all the way back to the union's founding in 1888. Machinists say that this is not just an administrative update, but a tribute to the original 19 machinists who organized the association in an Atlanta railroad pit over a century ago. By becoming Local 1, these Waycross, Georgia workers are cementing their place in history, linking today's rail operations directly to the Georgia roots of the whole union. If we missed anything, let us know at tvlr.fm/contact and subscribe to the newsletter at tvlr.fm because we have got double that information at least that is going to be going out in an email on Monday or Tuesday. So if you want the exhaustive Last Week in Southern Labor, subscribe to the newsletter at tvlr.fm. Really excited for this next segment. We are going to be talking to Julia Koncha about how last year 16 social workers at Gentiva in Washington, North Carolina, filed a petition for a union election with the Teamsters Local 391. Subsequent to that, the company hired the union-busting consultants at LRI Consulting Services for the price of $425 an hour plus expenses. The Teamsters have since pulled the petition for an election, and in an effort to bring bring more awareness to this industry, the union busting industry, and the tactics that they employ. This year, in partnership with Labor Lab, we'll be interviewing workers at workplaces where the employers hire union busters. This week, we speak to Julia Koncha, a worker at Gentiva who supported the union campaign. She joins us now to speak in her personal capacity. Julia, welcome to the Valley Labor Report.
Jacob, nice to be here.
It's great to have you. I really appreciate your time. Before we talk about the campaign, can you explain a little bit about your job and what you and your coworkers do in North Carolina?
So I am a social worker at a hospice company, Gentiva. One social worker out of a office full of nurses and health aid workers that provide care for hands-on care for our patients, and one chaplain. So we were trying to organize together because we were tired of being overworked. We were tired of being underpaid and undervalued for the incredible work that we do. We have such a we provide really valuable care for people that are dying and their families. And we just wanted to have dignity and respect by our employer.
Yeah, I mean, I could not imagine. I mean, that sounds like a very, very stressful environment to work in. My wife is a therapist, and but she's like at a high school, and so I could only imagine how much more difficult it would be doing kind of similar work, social work, being a chaplain or being the direct care workers at a place, like you said, where people are dying. And you said that, the campaign was started because y'all felt kind of unrecognized, like you weren't being given the dignity that you deserve. What were some of the things specifically that you would like to see changed in your workplace?
Higher pay for one, particularly for our aides. They do a lot of hard work that's hard on their bodies. It's very intimate work because they're bathing, they're changing people's diapers, pull-ups, things like that. And they're getting paid maybe like 16 to 18 an hour when they have credentials. And they're only paid hourly. So if they don't get enough patients in the day, then they're not getting paid a full day's work. And then our nurses, like right now we have 3 case managers for 50 patients. Like that's unreasonable and unsafe, really.
Right.
And they're working normal 8 to 5, but if they are assigned to see 8 patients that day, they're expected to see those 8 patients and fully document on what they've done. And so they're ending up working 60 to 70 hours a week, but only getting paid for 40. So that was just not right for us.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And so, that sounds like an adequate reason to try to organize your workplace. And so that's what y'all did. You filed a petition to have a union election with the Teamsters, Local 391. And after the campaign went public, like I said, your employer hired an anti-union consultant, paid them $425 an hour plus expenses. When was it that you realized that they had hired these people?
When they told us that we had mandatory meeting on Monday, we kind of realized that somebody would be coming to speak with us. And the meetings would be long, like over an hour, 2 hours. And they were mandatory. I know on their paperwork they said they were voluntary, but they definitely weren't. We were expected to be there. And if we weren't, they would call us and ask us when we were going to come. The consultant also tried to do ride-alongs with us. So we go to people's homes. And she wanted to ride along with us to patients' homes. And when we asked our boss what the purpose of that was for, we were told that it was for social interaction. So as far as I know, none of my coworkers took the consultant up on the ride along option because it seems to be a HIPAA violation for us. We weren't willing to take that chance.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean that sounds insane. I would not want to do that. Bringing a lot. I mean that's like you said. I mean not only a HIPAA violation, so it could potentially be illegal. But as you said, I mean the work that you're doing is very intimate. You're going into somebody's house and you're having somebody that's literally there basically paid to harass you and having them alone in your car. I mean that just sounds bonkers. When did you realize and were you surprised at how much these people were paid?
Yeah, when you told me that was $425 an hour, that was insane to me. She was there for 2 weeks too, so
wow,
she got a good bit of money for not a lot of work, and it was very tense those 2 weeks leading up to the election, and I think that intensity scared a lot of people. We still have a strong support for the union in our office, but there is some fears and some worry that
yeah, well, I mean that kind of stuff.
Yeah, if people find out, if the bosses realize who's for the union, that we're going to get retaliated against.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I mean it's a reasonable concern, obviously, and I want to talk about some of the tactics that they used to kind of instill that fear of retaliation. But before that, I want to circle back to the mandatory nature of the meetings. What was it specifically that gave you the impression that the meetings were mandatory rather than voluntary, as the union busters claimed in their paperwork?
Because my boss said that it was mandatory.
Wow. Was that in a written communication or verbal?
Yes, it was written.
Okay, I mean, I think that's pretty shut and dry, or open and shut. Okay, so that's interesting. I'm sure that I wonder what the recourse is for lying on federal paperwork. Maybe we'll be able to find that out at some point. So before you started this campaign, had you heard about union busters and this industry before?
Yeah, I had heard about them. I didn't know they quite got paid that much or that it would be so intense. But yeah, it was interesting to experience. I'll say that.
And so you said that they were there for about 2 weeks, and they made the environment very, very intense. One of the things specifically that they did was, they asked to ride along with you as you go to your patients' houses. We already went over that. That's kind of wild. But what were some of the other things that they did to make the environment, to create that intensity in the environment and make you feel that fear of being retaliated against?
So she'd like to have one-on-one meetings with you. Just hanging around the office, trying to talk about how scary the union is, even though it's not. Talking about strike pay was the big thing that scared off some of my coworkers, because we were told by the consultant that strike pay was only $100 a week with Teamsters, which is not true. But then, I think we needed some support from Teamsters too in that environment. And I know that, they're overworked too. It's like a problem everywhere, being overworked.
Mm-hmm. And so, what were some of the things that they said in these one-on-one meetings and in the mandatory captive audience meetings?
Talking about how the union can be violent and that there are laws against violence. That frightened some people, even but the striking really, everyone was afraid that we were going to go on strike and maybe didn't think that it was worth it, especially for $100 a week pay. But once she said that, it was kind of in people's minds that they wouldn't be able to survive a strike.
And so, I'm assuming when you talked to the union representatives and the union organizers about this concern, that they, presumably they told you that a strike would only happen if the workers in the bargaining unit authorized the strike, right? And voted to say, like, yes, we want to strike. It would be the decision of the workers at Gentiva whether or not you go on strike. And then also, like you mentioned, the Teamsters strike pay is significantly higher than $100 a week. But how did people react when they were kind of given some of the facts, or once that fear was placed in them, was it kind of hard to dislodge that feeling?
It was really hard to dislodge the feeling. It was really hard to get people to come to the union meetings after the consultant started coming to our office. She came at it with the perspective that the union is coming in to try and take over our office, that the union was a separate entity from us, even though we all know that we are the union, that we make the decisions for ourselves. But having that fear of this other unknown coming in to shake things up was, it was a good tactic on her part. I'll give her that.
What would your advice be for workers in a union campaign for effectively combating these consultants?
I think having more talking amongst your coworkers more openly about the union, and normalizing those kind of conversations so that they're not so secretive. I think that educating about the history of unions, because that's why we have laws against the violence, because we don't want it to get like how it used to be. I think educating your fellow coworkers about the history of unions could be really helpful for them to understand why it's so important. And it's not just about your office getting better hours, better pay. It's about, that's a big part, but also, like, I think that unionizing is the way to fight capitalism and fascism as a whole. I think that the only way for us to come together and to build a better world for us is to unionize.
Totally agree. And I think that, the one thing that you hear in organizer trainings is something that they call inoculation, where, in the medical sense, it's like a vaccine. You give somebody a little bit of something so that when they face the real thing, they're used to it. And if the first time that a worker ever hears about the possibility of a strike is from the boss or from one of their anti-union consultants, then, like you said, once that fear is placed in them, it's kind of difficult to dislodge. And so if you can talk about how you can show them the constitution of the union that you're seeking to organize with and say, look, this is how a strike would happen. There's no way for them to force you to go on strike. You would have to be the one to authorize it. Then when they hear it the second time from the anti-union consultant, it's harder for them to kind of place that fear deep in their psyche if they already know to expect to hear it from the anti-union consultant, and they know that these union busters are going to lie to them, right? And so giving them a heads up about what's going to come is really, really important. And so hopefully this has been helpful. Julia, is there anything else that you would want to leave folks with before we let you go?
Just join a union. If you want to fight fascism, if you want to make the world a better place, team up with your coworkers.
Julia Koncha, a social worker in North Carolina. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report. We are going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. The Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama local workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact April at our training center to start the process at 256-904-1753. No experience is needed. We offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is our mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communication system for unions.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth. All wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us. We've got a phone number. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also leave us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact or leave us a voicemail at that number at any time. Adam, you've got a couple of plugs this week, right?
I do have a few plugs. Appreciate it. So we got a big week coming up. It is the Selma Bridge Crossing Jubilee. So from March 5th through the 8th, there will be all kinds of events happening in and around Selma. I do know that the AFGE president, Everett Kelly, will be down there on Thursday evening for a mass meeting. There's going to be all kinds of stuff happening on Saturday. Dolores Huerta is going to be there for a Black and Brown Unity lunch. I will be down there tabling with Good Neighbors Alabama Coalition and the Recall Injustice campaign. And on Saturday afternoon in Selma at 4 o'clock, there will be a screening of the Alabama Solution. So there's going to be a panel discussion afterwards. Really excited about that. And then Sunday is the big march. And there will be a lot of folks down there meeting up and connecting. So hope to see some of y'all there in Selma this weekend. But if you can't attend, I really strongly encourage you to attend the virtual worker power chat I'm going to do on Tuesday evening. That's March 3rd. It's 6 o'clock. You can go to Alabama Arise and find more details there in terms of registration. It's going to be a Zoom call on Tuesday evening, March 3rd at 6 o'clock. I'll give a brief update on worker power legislation in Alabama. And then I'm going to turn it over to my friends at the Recall Injustice campaign to talk about the latest there, what's going on with Hyundai Kia in the supply chain, how the campaign is unfolding, and some of these events in Selma that are going to be happening. So again, that's Tuesday night, 6 o'clock. Check it out. That's going to be through Alabama Arise. And of course, you heard earlier this morning that Cover Alabama has their Healthcare Advocacy Day on Tuesday, March 10th. You can go to coveralabama.org to find out more there. The Alabama AFL-CIO has their legislative day and Roadkill Barbecue on Wednesday, April 1st in Montgomery at the AFL headquarters. So mark your calendars there. But yeah, really excited about these events happening this week. Hope to see some of y'all on Zoom or in Selma. And the last plug I have today, of course, we always encourage folks to go to labornotes.org/events. And follow that because there are always great trainings being offered. This month in March, they are restarting the Secrets of a Successful Organizer series. So if you or anyone you know wants to learn more about organizing, specifically in the workplace, but not just in the workplace, the skills that they teach are very, very helpful for any kind of organizing. So if you're doing political work, if you're doing social justice, community organizing work, whatever you're doing, the Secrets of a Successful Organizer training series by Labor Notes is really helpful. That's going to kick off March 4th at 6 p.m. Central. They also have a stewards workshop later this month on the 16th or March 16th, and that's going to be on investigating grievances. So if you are a steward or, elected officer who works with stewards, that could be a really helpful workshop for you. On the March 17th, they have What to Do When Your Union Breaks Your Heart. And the last note there is that general registration for the Big Labor Notes Conference in June in Chicago has already closed. There is a waiting list. If you'd like to get on the waiting list, you can do so. But I'm really glad that we got our tickets in time. That's for sure.
Adam, you've got a really exciting. We wanted to talk about this firefighter story in South Carolina, but before we get to that, we did have a couple of comments in the chat about what to do when you feel like you have a case that the union is not taking up. There is a really good workshop that Labor Notes does almost on a monthly basis, as somebody else in the chat noted, what to do when your union breaks your heart. I think that you mentioned that in your plugs. You can go to labornotes.org/event. The next instance of that workshop is going to be on March 17th. So I encourage people when they're having, if they're having difficulties with their union, that's a workshop that you can take to kind of think about strategies for how to make your union better when you feel like it's kind of failing you. But this person in particular says they have a grievance meeting on Tuesday after they say they were terminated for calling for a safety representative to verify that a machine had been locked out and tagged out, and also that they had been told that they were a week or two short of qualifying for FMLA, and so they're saying they're not getting any help from their union. They're not being given the collective bargaining agreement by the union, and generally they feel like the union is not kind of doing what it needs to do to represent them. And for what it's worth, this person says that they've been a dues-paying member the entire time they've been working there. So, what are your first stab thoughts at how people should approach issues like this?
Well, in my perspective, I would say the most important thing is do not give up. The most important advocate for yourself is yourself. And I know that's easier said than done when it's your case and you're the one who's in trouble, quote unquote, or it's your job on the line. But ultimately, that is something I always advised members who I've helped with disciplinary issues is, do your homework and be your own best advocate in terms of gathering your documentation, in terms of understanding the company or the employer's charges against you and preparing your own notes and rebuttal. But I would also say don't give up in terms of getting the help you need. And if that means you have to talk to other people, if you have to go other routes, do that. And the last thing I will say that comes to my mind is, as you mentioned, the collective bargaining agreement. By law, you are supposed to have access to your contract as a union member. It's part of the Union Members' Bill of Rights that we actually discussed last weekend. And so that's part of the LMRDA, and the Association for Union Democracy could be a helpful resource on that front.
Yeah. Look up these. What's their website? uniondemocracy.org. Is that it?
I do believe so. Yeah. So there will be some helpful information on there. It's always unfortunate, if you're running into those obstacles, because as someone who's, dealt with disciplinary issues, both for members and in my own cases, I get that it's very, very tough. But again, I would say doing your own homework the best that you can, preparing your documentation, covering yourself in terms of, gathering all the evidence that you possibly can, right? So that you make it as seamless as possible for your rep or attorney, whoever is going to be representing you or supposed to represent you. The easier you can make it on them to take your case on and to effectively represent you, the better, because no one knows your case better than you, right? You may not know the law or the contract as well as your rep or your attorney, but you're going to know the case itself. You're going to know details and context and background and relationships, right, that your rep isn't going to know. So the more you can, gather your notes together and get your thoughts written down while it's fresh on your mind, that is really critical to any kind of disciplinary case you're dealing with. But yeah, don't give up. If you've got to go above someone's head to get the representation that you are entitled to, that's what you got to do. Because, we all want to make sure that when something happens, folks have our back. That's one of the main reasons why folks join the union, is for that protection. We recognize that all it takes is a unfair supervisor or honest mistake or wrong place, wrong time, and your job can be on the line, and you want people to protect you and advocate for you. So I hate, anytime that kind of situation happens, but be your own best advocate and don't give up. Get the representation you need.
One thing that that we mentioned in our conversation with the Association for Union Democracy last week was that strategically, often going kind of the legal route might not be the most beneficial. But I do think that in cases where, you're trying to exact a particular outcome with respect to discipline or termination, I do think that these kind of legal routes can be helpful. But with respect to getting your collective bargaining agreement, your steward might not even know potentially that they are legally obligated, or the union as an institution is legally obligated to provide you with a copy of the contract. Or they might not know that you know that. So, sometimes even just sending them an email, letting them know that that they have to, by law, give you a copy of the contract. Oftentimes that, that can be the initiator for some sort of action, because they realize that they're dealing with somebody who knows a little bit, right? So
that's right. Yeah, I mean, I think once they recognize that you are aware of your rights and could potentially bring them up on charges for failure to represent, it certainly changes the game. But I would agree with you, Jacob. Typically, that legalistic route can be slow and messy and can damage relationships, because obviously, if you're threatening the people who are supposed to be helping you, that could influence the dynamics there. But I do think you're right, letting folks know that you're aware, you're educating yourself, you're informing yourself of your rights, that can go a long way. And we hope that it's something that can be resolved. And the last thing I'll say is, ultimately, unions are the members. And we have a tendency to fall back on the legalistic process when it comes to individual discipline cases. And I think we often don't organize enough around protecting our members who are caught up in this kind of stuff. And so, find your allies. Do you have union siblings in the local who will have your back and stand in solidarity with you? And that's something that, is worth pursuing.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, Adam, there's this really cool case out of South Carolina where the firefighters kind of put their boss in their place a little bit. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we came across this story, I guess a week or two ago, and it was something that stood out in part because it was in the South and because it was about free speech rights. So Local 2261 with the International Association of Firefighters is in Greenville, South Carolina. And for those of you who don't know, South Carolina is the least unionized state in the country, and in many ways, you could argue probably the most anti-union state in the country. But the IAFF secured a really big federal court ruling in South Carolina that reinforced the firefighters' First Amendment rights in states without collective bargaining protections. And the case stems from the 2024 termination of Gregory Cargill. He is a Greenville firefighter, and he was president of the Local 2261. And basically what happened was Cargill, our firefighter here, sent a letter on union letterhead, union stationery, to a city council member. And he had some concerns about working conditions and staff morale. He had been trying to speak with the fire chief for months and was told he could only meet as an employee, not as a union leader. So eventually he got tired of the runaround and he sent something to the city council, which makes sense. Because the city council obviously is going to have some oversight of the fire chief. And, so he sent this letter. He shared some of these unresolved concerns around safety and training and new policies, and, talked about the growing frustration within the department. He was doing what you want your union leader to do, which is speak up for the members and bring attention to the issues in the workplace, to try to get them resolved. And when the fire chief learned about this letter to the city council, he summoned him in and straight up fired him. He fired the guy for contacting the city council on his union stationery. And naturally, Cargill sought assistance from the union, and the IAFF, the International Association of Firefighters, has something called the Guardian Policy. And so they filed suit alleging that the city and the fire chief violated his First Amendment rights to free speech, association, and petition, and engaged in unlawful restraint through his chain of command policy. And obviously, we know that workers everywhere, particularly here in the South, risk retaliation when it comes to speaking up on the job. The general president, Edward Kelly of the International Association of Firefighters, he, specifically said silencing firefighters puts public safety at risk, and the union will not accept it. And that really makes a lot of sense given, the nature of their work, right? The idea that a firefighter wouldn't feel comfortable speaking up on safety issues is very alarming, not just for them, but for all of us. And so the case is ongoing, but the ruling has had immediate implications for all the firefighters affiliates in the states that limit or prohibit public safety collective bargaining, which, is predominantly in the South. The city and the fire chief had sought to dismiss the case, and the court denied their motion and allowed it to proceed. And in the ruling, the court found that the firefighters' communications rightly addressed matters of public concern, including safety, training, morale, and operational effectiveness. And the decision has prompted discussion among firefighters and fire chiefs across the South regarding its implications for labor relations. And the 12th District Vice President, Walt Dix of IAFF, said, quote, "This is a tremendous ruling for any affiliate in the South where we have to constantly battle with fire department administrators and elected officials trying to suppress union voices. Fire chiefs now commonly claim chain of command as an excuse to ignore union leaders. It's nonsense, and this was an egregious termination." So the union's Guardian policy provides legal assistance to its members who have been disciplined or terminated for their union activities. If you believe that has happened to you, you can contact your district vice president. But yeah, that was a big win for the firefighters. A very egregious case, very clear, just like you mentioned earlier, kind of a open and closed case of retaliation. Couldn't get more blatant than that. But it's really a big win to protect free speech rights. It's always a tough task for public sector workers who are put in a difficult position. Their job impacts the public. Their job is funded by tax dollars. But there's often a great fear of speaking out or speaking up about issues for fear of this targeting and retaliation. So shout out to the firefighters for this big win in South Carolina. It's going to resonate across the South and hopefully pave the way for better labor relations in fire departments across the South. Maybe, some of these fire chiefs and city governments will start to act right.
Yeah.
So wanted to celebrate that and always love a good win.
Yeah, really, really exciting story. And we got a couple of Boss Watch stories to round out for you. Over in Florida, the U.S. Department of Labor has cited a concrete manufacturer for exposing workers to hazards after an employee suffered fatal injuries after entering the unprotected area of a concrete block cubing machine in July of 2025. The department's Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, cited O'Donnell Concrete Corporation, operating as O'Donnell Block Manufacturing Corporation, with 9 serious violations for inadequate machine guarding and for failing to ensure lockout-tagout procedures were used, electrical panels were marked, and the locking mechanism operational. They also failed to implement an effective hearing conservation program for workers exposed to high noise levels, and they failed to incorporate silica hazards into the company's hazard communication program. So OSHA assessed $58,000 in penalties. Over in Oklahoma, the urological specialists of Oklahoma, a medical practice that operates 5 clinics employing 24 physicians in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri, will pay $90,000 and furnish other relief to settle a pregnancy and disability discrimination lawsuit brought by the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, EEOC. According to the lawsuit, in 2023, the urologic specialists denied reasonable accommodations to a medical assistant at its Tulsa facility during the final trimester of her high-risk pregnancy. Rather than allow the medical assistant to sit, take short breaks, or work part-time as recommended by her doctor to protect her health and safety, the medical practice forced her to take unpaid leave, refused to guarantee her job when she returned to work following the birth of her child, and refused to guarantee that it would provide breaks for her to express breast milk. When the assistant stated she could not return to work without those guaranteed breaks, urologic specialists fired her. Federal law provides robust protections for pregnant women and new mothers in the workplace, said Andrea Barron, the regional attorney for the EEOC's St. Louis district. Employers must follow the law, train their supervisors, and ensure that they provide required accommodations to women who are pregnant or have pregnancy-related disabilities. Such alleged conduct violates the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act and the Americans with Disability Act, ADA, which prohibits pregnancy and disability discrimination. The EEOC filed suit in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Oklahoma after first attempting to reach a pre-litigation settlement through its administrative conciliation process. In addition to the required monetary relief, the 4-year consent decree settling the suit obligates urologic specialists to designate personnel tasked with ensuring compliance with the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act going forward. It requires them to adopt strong policies and procedures for the provision of reasonable accommodations for pregnant or disabled employees and to train supervisors and other employees. The decree also requires urologic specialists to adopt and use a system to track and maintain all requests for pregnancy or disability accommodations and post a notice to employees about their federal right to be free from pregnancy and disability discrimination and report periodically to the EEOC. That's going to be it for the first half of our program. If you want to continue listening, you can find us online at TVLR.fm, on YouTube and Facebook and Twitch and TikTok, all at The Valley Labor Report. We got a great second half lined up for you today. We're going to be talking to workers at Theorist Media. Theorist Media owns some of the biggest YouTube channels. They do like videos about video games, videos about films. They even have a cooking YouTube channel and a style YouTube channel. And so workers at Theorist Media are now organizing with the International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees, their Local 700, and the Writers Guild of America West. Really excited about this campaign as somebody who has watched some of those YouTube channels for years now, and really excited to talk to some of the people behind the scenes doing that work, talk to them about their campaign. Really excited for that conversation. We will also be talking a little bit about the war in Iran, apparently, even though I thought that we had obliterated their nuclear program, but apparently not. Apparently we were being lied to last year when we were told that their nuclear program had been obliterated. So, going to talk about that and a lot more. Find us online, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, The Valley Labor Report to continue watching. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Thanks for your time. Okay, we're off the radio now. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with Overtime.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley in the Spice Radio studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people in the South and all over the country. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us. If you'd like to give us a call, the phone number is 844-899-8857. You can leave us a voicemail at the same number if you're not catching us live, and you can send us a written note at tvlr.fm/contact. So, this has been so recent that I don't think we have any union press releases, union statements about this issue yet. But I do know that unions have, at least, over the last 5 years or so, been much better than they used to be on the issue of war. Actually, it used to be, if you read a little bit about union history, the labor movement was pretty traditionally split, with probably a majority of the labor movement being supportive of many wars. Talk about Korea, you talk about Vietnam, you talk about Iraq. There's always a thread of the labor movement that was oppositional to war, but I think at various times you've had a majority of the labor movement being supportive of the war because of various wars, because more war means more war jobs. Right, you've got people working at Boeing and Lockheed Martin and stuff whose jobs kind of rely on this sort of stuff. So the unions that represent them have in the past been incentivized to support a very aggressive foreign policy. I do think over the last 5 to 10 years, though, the labor movement has really, the mainstream of the labor movement has trended in a much more positive, pro-peace direction. And so we do anticipate seeing from various unions and probably from the AFL-CIO statements over the next week or two condemning the Trump administration's actions in Iran. I actually had somebody ask me what I thought about it yesterday, and or maybe it was the day before, but while the saber rattling stuff was happening, before the strike actually happened. And my thoughts were very minimally, I thought we were done with it, right? I mean, that's what we were told last year when they attacked Iran's nuclear sites, supposed nuclear sites, was that we had obliterated their program and it would never be able to return. We had knocked their nuclear program back to the Stone Age, and now we're done. Bing bong, we're done. That's what we were told. And so now we're being enlisted, the United States, into a broader conflict with this country that we supposedly eradicated the nuclear. It's just totally ridiculous. Adam, I know that the foreign policy stuff is much more, I don't want to say it's in your wheelhouse. You're not a foreign policy expert by any means, not to insult you. But yeah, this is something that is definitely, you track it more closely than I do. And in part because, foreign policy was a big part of your kind of politicization. And so you've read about the history of American conflicts in the Middle East, but it's worth, I think, before you give your comments on what has happened over the last couple of days, reminding people about how we overthrew the democratically elected president of Iran in 1953, I believe it was, and maybe just explaining a little bit of what happened there and how the situation that exists in Iran today is really a result in large, you can trace a line from America's actions in the 50s.
Yeah, that's right. And you're right. Issues of war and peace really contributed to my political development. I was raised very conservative. I was raised, coming of age during the Iraq War, post 9/11. I think I was 12 when 9/11 happened. And so you can imagine going into high school, I went into ROTC. I thought, I might even join the military myself after high school. And I was told by our administration and by a lot of folks in authority that the folks in the Middle East hated us for our freedoms. And, basically they were backwards and that they were always fighting, wanting to fight us, wanting to fight themselves. There was just nothing we could do but just blow them up. That was the only real way to deal with things. Turn the Middle East into glass. I heard that from a lot of grown-ups growing up. And, then I started reading history, and I was just always curious about history, and I like to read, and it was my favorite subject in school. And so I was learning more and more about the real history of the United States foreign policy. And, as a teenager, I learned what you mentioned, that the United States, along with Great Britain and allies, particularly through the intelligence agencies like the CIA, overthrew the democratically elected government of Iran in 1953. And what prompted this is that the government of Iran wanted to nationalize its oil resources. Um, Oil obviously being a pretty important resource in most Middle Eastern countries, including Iran. And, they thought it would be a good idea for their country and their citizens if the wealth of that resource, went to them rather than the British and the Westerners. The oil was owned by what eventually would become BP, a company that we're all familiar with. Many of us remember their famous pollution of our Gulf years ago. So, that happened in 1953. The government was overthrown there. What replaced it was the Shah. And this was a, monarchy slash military dictatorship that was backed by the West, by the United States and our allies. The United States, Israel, and others trained and funded and supported his secret police, which was quite brutal and helped to impose his 25, 26-year reign over the country of Iran. During that time, there was an interesting mix of, the dictatorship, while at the same time trying to quote unquote Westernize or quote unquote modernize, and of course, extreme inequality within the country. All these things fan the flames of revolution. And in 1979, Iran had a revolution. You can dig deeper in terms of who was involved in that, and the different forces at play. But what eventually happened is that Islamic forces, theocratic forces, were able to take power in Iran and have been in power there ever since. And of course, once that happened, you had the Iran hostage crisis. Iran and the West, were bitter enemies basically from that point on. But that didn't stop some really interesting things from happening. During the 1980s, as this new theocratic government was taking form in Iran, and was kind of the bad guy in America's eyes, it was fighting a really terrible, brutal war with Iraq, its neighbor. Well, Iraq was governed by Saddam Hussein. Many of us learned about Saddam Hussein during the 2000s or during the 90s, during the Gulf Wars. But during the 80s, Saddam Hussein was an ally of the United States. He was funded and armed by the United States and its allies. And so, Iraq and Iran were fighting a nasty war, very, very, very brutal war. Many civilians killed in this process. There were chemical weapons used. And ironically, the United States actually was also selling weapons to Iran during this time period. So I guess when you back both sides of a war, you're always going to come out on top either way. Certainly the weapons manufacturers did. And so that was part of the Iran-Contra scandal. where the Reagan administration was selling weapons illegally to Iran to fund warfare in Latin America, where United States and allies were also killing people in Latin America at the same time as folks were dying in the Middle East. All of this happening in our name and with our tax dollars. And so, it's this environment of longstanding, tangled webs of alliances, coups, civil wars, dictatorships backed by our tax dollars, by our military machine. All of this has festered for decades. To bring it back more to the more recent past, the Obama administration did reach a deal with the Iranian government regarding its nuclear program. It seemed like things were kind of calming down in terms of tensions, but that was upended during the first Trump administration. He withdrew from that deal. Many may remember his famous assassination of the Iranian general during that term. And, during the Biden era, it never really, they weren't able to put things back together. And so here we are today with more conflict. And it really troubles me as someone, who was shocked and appalled by the war in Iraq, by the way that our government lied to so many of us for the sake of profit and greed. And it's just remarkable how we can trace the roots of this violence back to, these acts of greed and empire and exploitation. And we as working people deserve so much better. Many working class activists over the generations have stood strong for the cause of peace and international cooperation, because we as working people have more in common with each other around the world than we do with the bosses and billionaires in our own countries. And it's they who start these wars, and they expect people like us to go and fight them. And, so the last thing I'll say is I really want to commend the UE, United Electrical Workers. They put out a statement last year, and it was called "For Jobs, Peace, and a Pro-Worker Foreign Policy." And if you haven't had the time to check that out, I really strongly encourage you to. And I commend them for their leadership and for their real bravery in speaking the truth about what is done in our name and with our tax dollars, and the violence that is enacted across this world that has made us all less safe and has harmed working people here and everywhere.
Yep. Appreciate a little bit of that context, Adam. We've got, I believe, our guests in the Zoom. Really excited to have this conversation with Kat Turner and Yossi Berman, people who work at Theorist Media. Before we talk to them, I wanted to play this clip from their union's Instagram page announcing their campaign. Let's play clip 1.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. We're some of the folks behind Theorist Media.
We're editors and writers,
Sound designers and graphic artists, and a lot more. We're also creators, gamers,
nerds, and fans.
We're partners and parents. We're siblings and roommates.
We have fur babies, we have kids, we have bills to pay.
And for the past few months, we've been fighting like hell to win recognition for our unions here at Theorist.
We love what we do so much, but we also want say in how that work gets done.
We had hoped that our company, the same place we have dedicated so much of ourselves to, would recognize our unions through the fair and swift process of card check.
The simple and safe counting of our signatures in support of a union by a neutral party.
Instead, our parent company LunarX has dismissed our supermajority
and is even trying to cut many of us out of the group by insisting we go through a government election.
A process full of bureaucratic ways to delay or even stop us.
Please tell LunarX to do the right thing.
Theorists unite!
Theorists unite!
All right. And so if you couldn't get it there, they are the workers for Theorist Media. Theorist Media owns just a whole bunch of YouTube channels. I knew about the Game Theorists and the Film Theorists. I even knew about the Cooking channel, but they also have a Style channel too. There may be, I think there's even a couple of others, but they do a lot of work. I have been watching the Game Theorists and the Film Theorists for probably almost 10 years now, so it's really exciting to get to talk to some of the people that are doing the behind the scenes work for that channel, and really excited about this campaign. As a unionist myself, Yossi Berman, Kat Turner, welcome to the Valley Labor Report.
Thank you for having us. Hi.
Really excited. Yes, really excited to talk to y'all. Kat is an assistant editor, and Yossi is a senior sound engineer. I want to talk to y'all about your union campaign, but before we do that, can you, explain a little bit about what you do for Theorist Media? Because I think that YouTube is now, I learned this relatively recently, the app with people spend more time on YouTube per man hour than they do any other streaming website. People spend more time on YouTube than Netflix, than HBO, than Prime Video, anything like that. More time is spent watching YouTube videos, which is kind of astonishing. And so I do think there are more and more people realizing that, it's not all kind of people like me who throw on a camera and just start talking. There are a lot of YouTube channels, and even us over the last 3 or 4 years, we've gotten we have some interesting graphics and stuff that we do that we're pretty proud of. But the channels like y'all's, there's a lot of work that goes into that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my role as an assistant editor is a bit different than what you would typically get from an assistant editor role. I consider it more of asset curation. So a lot of my work is just pulling, Creative Commons safe things that can be used in visual media, or creating art so that our motion graphics animators can animate it on screen. That's about it for me. It's kind of a weird, it doesn't really fit with assistant editor, which is why I say asset curation makes more sense.
Right. Yossi?
I am in charge of pretty much all the audio that goes through the 4 of the 5 Theorist channels. Most of GT Live doesn't go through me, but whether it's editing the audio of the host speaking, or adding the music and the edit, mixing the live action parts that now we have more with the food theory and style theory stuff. That's pretty much it. I've been doing it for a hot minute, and and have enjoyed doing it for I'm about to reach 11 years.
Wow.
So,
Wow. You've been with it. So, being with it 11 years, you were probably, when you started, one of a handful of people, right?
Yeah, 3-ish. I came in just as Theorist was expanding a little bit the first time, right? When it was opening Film Theory. I came in right after Film Theory started. So just at that point, Matt, Pat, and Stephanie were hiring a few more editors and a couple of writers, and they hired a producer as a full-time employee about a month after I came on. It's all... That was the expansion time. But yes, a lot has changed since since we're a group of 6 guys to we're a full corporate company now.
Yeah, how many people are in y'all's bargaining unit now that are trying to organize both with the IA and the WGA?
20 something. The number keeps kind of moving a bit for reasons that we don't need to get into the details of, but 25-ish is a good more or less.
Yeah, that's, a pretty big company. I think for particularly people would think for a YouTube channel, 25 people to run a few YouTube channels. That's not something that a lot of people would think of. And Yossi, while we're on you, and then I'd be interested in hearing this from Kat. But how did you get into this line of work?
I consider myself a bit of an early adapter of YouTube from a millennial perspective, right? In 2010, I started vlogging. I discovered some of the stuff and really enjoyed it, and was very active in my little vlogging thing, but never, accumulated my own views. 2014, I moved to LA. I went to VidCon. Really interested in working behind the scenes of any like audio visual media. Like I would do TV, I do movies. I just was very passionate about this stuff. But I met MadPat at VidCon. We talked. And long story short, he needed someone to edit the audio, and I was available and knew how to do that. And over the years, learned how to do the engineering parts too.
Kat, what about you?
My situation was kind of weird. So at that time, my then roommate was working as an animator. And we had, I think at that time, Theorist had one other assistant editor. But the amount of turnaround for, like how quick our turnaround is for videos, I think, we really needed more people designated to just making the things that go on the screen. Because so much of our videos are animation more than, clipping things together. And I was like, I could do that. And then I learned Photoshop, and then I applied and it worked. This is the only job I've ever had like this.
Yeah.
And it's gone well. I've been here 4 years.
Very, very cool. Exciting work that y'all are doing, and to just give people a little bit of a sense of the scale. Game Theorists have 20 million subscribers. Film Theorists have 13.4 million. The Food Theorists have 5.5 million. The Style Theorists have 2.7 million, and GT Live is 3.6 million. So, big platforms here, big organizations that y'all are working for and doing the work for. So what was it that made y'all decide to start a union campaign in the first place? I guess we can start with you, Kat, if that makes sense.
Honestly, I think that should start with Yossi. Because I think Yossi has it was kind of like the first, I joined in later in the committee.
Yeah, Yossi, how did it get started?
Basically a few of the editors and some of us were talking about our about our pay, about our benefits, how we're feeling about things, especially after what some of us refer to as the big switcheroo, right? MadPat stepping off and moving to the new hosts, who are great. Just on a personal level, I love them all. They're awesome dudes and lady. But we were talking about how the new management was handling things, and basically we were seeing that a lot of us were unhappy with similar issues, and so we basically reached out to to IATSE, and started a campaign, basically, started talking with everyone else in the company to see if we're not crazy and it's not just us.
Right. And so, Kat, maybe that's a good place for you to jump in and explain to people how y'all were able to get a majority of your coworkers on board, because you've in your announcement seeking voluntary recognition from Lunar X, you said that that a supermajority, if I'm remembering right, that it was nearly unanimous among people in the bargaining unit are want to unionize with the IA and the WGA. How were some of these early adopters of the union campaign able to get people like you and the rest of the crew on board?
I mean, it didn't take much convincing. We I think a lot of our people, it's kind of funny. I think a lot of our people had such an affinity for Theorist before they even, got this job. That's usually it's how they got the job.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people were watching them in high school or, in college, and then they joined in after. And I think, talking to people and having heart-to-hearts, everyone just kind of shared the same sentiment that, like, we could make this better. We should make this better. And I think that a big reason for me was a lot of my role wasn't standardized at all. And most of YouTube isn't standardized. There's really no, people aren't setting, kind of regulations for things in the industry on YouTube and like with content creation. And that should change. And I think with YouTube amassing, I think this year it was 60 billion in revenue, total revenue for 2025. They have surpassed Netflix and Hulu and all of those streaming platforms. And why shouldn't this vocation be treated like a real job? I mean, it's a real job. So that's what we hope to kind of get done with a union, is like case by case basis where we can say, hey, this is what we need as workers.
And so it was back in November that you all announced your campaign to organize, said that you were seeking voluntary recognition from your employer, Lunar X. How have they responded, Yossi?
Nicely telling us no. In very flowery and nice words, telling us that they insist that we go through a different through the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, with an election over there. No, and right, we are all very aware that both them and us are aware that the NLRB currently is not functioning, right? The 5-person board has a single person on it. Right. The Trump administration is not very labor friendly, let's say. So we know and they know that any process going through the NLRB is just going to be long and meandering and could just be stuck in litigation forever. We have proven our supermajority to them in multiple ways, right? We've besides the press releases, right? We've also sent a worker letter to the CEO where we all signed. And what I mean is, like, we all signed. There's so many signatures showing beyond a shadow of a doubt we have a supermajority, and we can just do a card check with a neutral party to make sure, because we already signed these cards months and months ago. So as far as we're concerned, we already held an election. We already voted. We just need them to check those votes and see that indeed, right, this is virtually unanimous.
Right, right. And that is such a shame that they have not responded in more good faith. And I would assume that having worked for the company as long as y'all haven't, and having as good of feelings as you seem to towards the company, that you would have, or at least towards the project. I don't know about the big owner now, Lunar X, but at least towards the project, that the expectation would have been that, these people that I've, this organization that I've devoted my life to and that I spent so much time to, that they would respect the wishes of their workers.
Yes. I have nothing to add.
Yeah.
Yes, you would.
Well, is there anything else that you would want to share with the audience about the about working at Theorist Media, or about the campaign that you feel like would be valuable for people to understand?
I'll piggy on something Kat said earlier about the standards around the industry, because this is we are campaigning for us right now, right? This is about theorists unionizing, and the the great logo that we made for our theorist union. But this is also a bigger picture thing. Like, we're really hoping to set a standard for the industry as a whole, because as we've said now multiple times, right, this industry is a big industry that makes a lot of money, and and it's way past time. It is long past due that it is held up to the same standards as other parts of the entertainment industry, as film and as television. And I take a lot of pride, right? Part of having, considering myself a theorist, a person who's been with theorists for such a long time, is that Theorist tries to generally be at the forefront of these industry moves. Right. We in many ways that I'm blanking on right now, but it's been a long history of right, talking about how the algorithm works, and the different phases of YouTube and how it's grown, and I think that it is right for unionization in YouTube as an industry to come from theorists, and hopefully we can set a good precedent so that any other YouTube company that also wants to unionize will have good deals that are already waiting for them. Because right now, when we get there, we're just we're setting the precedent, right? So
a lot of these, having been covering and been a part of the labor movement for so long, something exciting that can happen is when workers see other workers winning, that inspires action. And so I know that we're going to be following this story very closely, and hopefully once you get your voluntary recognition, once you get a good contract, workers at other big YouTube studios will reach out to the WGA and the IA and start organizing their own unions, and then you can you start to see a union density among YouTube on YouTube channels that start to match the Hollywood major motion picture, the motion the big film studios. So really, it's a really exciting campaign, and I really do think, like you said, it would be in keeping with Theorist Media's sort of niche as being a leader on YouTube. Kat, was there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I think Yossi said it perfectly. I think we need to start the conversation, and it'll get big from there.
Kat Turner is an assistant editor at Theorist Media, a member of the organizing committee with IATSE, the Motion Picture Editors Guild Local 900. Yossi Berman is a senior sound engineer at Theorist Media and a member of the organizing committee with the Motion Picture Editors Guild Local 700. Is there anything right now that listeners can do to help?
At the moment, really just talking about what we're doing and what you'd like to see others doing in this, on this platform with unionizing is great, but we've got bigger things coming up. Definitely, keeping in tune with the platforms through, the rank and file, the local 700, just, the IATSE page and the WGA, anything that you can do to support will be coming up real soon.
All right. Yossi Berman and Kent Turner, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Have a good one.
All right, you too. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857. TVLR.fm/contact if you want to send us a written note. Das Nomo in the chat says, the entire YouTube industry needs more regulations and worker protections. Please support Theorists workers. Appreciate their participation in the chat. Never give up. Theorists unite. Keep up the good fight. Roll Tide. Roll Tide. So let's see, Adam. What do you want to? We got a few things on our plate to get to. What do you want to talk about next?
Well, I kind of hijacked your plan by talking about foreign policy to open overtime. So if you want to go back to anything you had, I'm down for that for sure. I did enjoy that story just now because I think it, like they said, this is a new industry. We've got to set the standard, and that's got to be our approach in every new industry. Every new job that's created is an opportunity for us to organize and for us to raise the floor and to set new standards. So I hope that they are really, a harbinger of what's to come in the YouTube industry. And a lot of their story resonated with my personal story of organizing at a nonprofit where, similar to them, we all believed in the work, believed in the mission, had good relationships, and it was more like, hey, I think we can take things to the next level. Right.
Yeah.
And, so it's really disappointing, though, to hear they haven't received voluntary recognition. It's so easy to do. Really makes the company look bad when they refuse to do so.
Yep. Well, let's talk about this Teamsters UPS lawsuit. We don't have a whole lot to talk about, but there was a major update from last week. We talked about it last week, and we kind of laid out the general background, which is that a few months ago, UPS offered a voluntary separation program that 3,000 drivers ultimately took. It had a minimum payout of $10,000. It was like $1,800 per year of service or something like that. So it was not very much, and only 3,000 drivers ended up taking it. Apparently, UPS wanted more than that. The Teamsters lawyer said that UPS is targeting 10,000 drivers they want to get rid of 10,000 drivers. And so they are now offering another buyout program, which would give drivers $150,000 to retire and agree to never work for UPS again. Really concerning sort of, language in that contract. And so subsequent to UPS saying they're going to be doing a second buyout deal in their earnings call, the Teamsters filed a lawsuit to try to stop them from offering this buyout to its workers. On the theory that, for one, it's direct dealing with individual workers, which is unlawful because the Teamsters are the exclusive bargaining agent for workers who are represented by the Teamsters at UPS, meaning that any change in working conditions has to be collectively bargained with the union. That's the law. And so I think that's pretty straightforward, and it would seem to me that would be kind of the end of the case. Are UPS is UPS direct dealing with individual employees or not? And it seems pretty straightforward that they are in this case. They have not collectively bargained this buyout deal with the Teamsters. They're just offering it to individual employees. And by the way, the contract also includes a provision that says that they waive any right to representation in a grievance or arbitration proceeding that might come about as a result of the of taking the buyout deal. I don't know how much that will stand in a court of law if, it ends up being found that the buyout program was a violation of the contract. I don't know if you can just sign away your right to union representation. I'm not sure what the case law is on that. But so the Teamsters took it to court seeking an emergency injunction to prevent the company from even offering the program. The court did not rule in time, and UPS did offer the program. They had done that by the time that we went live last week. But subsequent to that, the courts did rule that they would not issue an injunction on the buyout program. Importantly, this was not a decision on the merits. They said that the union claims of harm were not founded because arbitration could resolve any problems, and that workers would be subject to involuntary layoffs if some don't voluntarily leave the company, right? And so the judge did not rule, is this legal? Is this not legal? The judge basically just said this is not the proper forum for such a thing, and the proper avenue for this to be resolved is through the arbitration procedure, which is laid out in the Teamsters contract. And also that that the harm would be greater if I stopped them, because then they would would lay people off. But that is and so the judge gave the UPS the green light, and it's very concerning, and so I wanted to respond to a couple of to a couple of kind of trains of thought that I saw in the comment section under the latest video. And one of those trains of thought was, why should UPS be stopped? If UPS wants to get rid of people, and there are some people who are willing to go for the right price, why should they not be able to individually negotiate that deal? And the reason that UPS should be stopped is because the drivers are unionized. They have elected to have an exclusive bargaining agent to bargain over their wages and working conditions. Individual negotiation with a company undermines the entire purpose of collective bargaining. You undermine the status and the ability and the strength of the union by going around the union and negotiating individual deals for yourself. And those 3,000 drivers that took the first buyout program are an exact representation of this, right? Because most drivers, even individually, knew that $10,000 was not very much money. UPS, if they want to get rid of drivers, they can give more money. They have more money to give for that purpose, right? But those 3,000 drivers, because they decided on their own individually to do this, they lost out. And now also involved in that buyout was signing away your rights. And so they lost out on this 10 times bigger buyout package, right? Whereas if the union had negotiated it, they could have, it's not even to say that, maybe there couldn't have been some deal worked out. But if the union had negotiated it, the union would have done their best to get the best possible buyout package for everybody, to have the rollout be orderly, and in such a way that if the company violates the contract, the buyout plan, then the union has recourse. If you take this buyout plan individually, and something happens and they don't end up paying you, or, the Roswell Hub was talking about this. When you waive away your union rights, if you are actually able to do that, then if there is a problem with you getting your money or something happens, then the union can't protect you. It's just you and this huge multi-billion-dollar corporation, right? So doing these individual deals totally undermine the reason for collective bargaining. It's not negotiated. You're going to be bargaining with the company directly. And then, and so, why not allow employees to make their own decisions whether to take the buyout or not? They could make that decision if the buyout program was collectively bargained. That's the whole thing, is that the plan needs to be collectively bargained. Workers deserve to have a say in how these plans are rolled out. That's the whole point. And so, if you want more specific UPS insider stuff, I would really recommend watching Roswell Hub's video on this. They've got some advice, and one of the things that they said is, as it is, even though it's not a collectively bargained plan, it should be collectively bargained. If you were going to retire in the next year, maybe it makes sense to do this. But if you're 30 years old, and you're a top, you're at the top of the progression, and you're thinking about taking that $150,000, you should really think about that, because $150,000 is really only for a top progression driver 1 year of compensation and benefits and stuff, right? You got your wages, you got your health care, you got your pensions. $150,000 in the grand scheme of things, and in a lifetime, right? If you're 30 years old, you're going to have to work for at least another 25 years somewhere. $150,000 is not going to last you 25 years. That is not enough money. It's one thing to take this deal if you're near retirement. But if you're a young person, youngish, even 40, 50 years old, you should really think twice about whether or not this would be the right move for you. Be judicious about it, about whether or not you take this deal. But yeah, Adam, I don't know. Is there anything else? Is there anything kind of just strategically or principally that you think should be said about, well, why can't people just take this deal if they want?
No, I think you nailed it in terms of the individual versus collective conflict that's at the root of this, right? And that just is what it is.
Right. There was another comment that's not directly related to the specific buyout program, but that I thought was funny. It says, been in several unions over the years and not found anything good. I was fired once because I invoked a contract rule. 3 months later, they got my job back, but never made me whole. And, it's just so funny that you can type that and not kind of be cognizant of how good you have it. Because if you were in a non-union workplace and you were fired because you pointed to the employee handbook, or you pointed to something that you upset the manager, guess what? 3 months later, you wouldn't have your job back at all. It'd be great if you could have your job back after 3 months plus back pay. And in a lot of unions do that. You get your job back and you get back pay. But getting your job back at all is really a pretty unique thing in the United States of America. Right? You only get that in a union workplace. And so not, I don't know. I don't want to sound like a boomer, but not being grateful is kind of nuts. That is bonkers. And saying never not found, I've been in several unions. A union got my job back for me, but I've never found anything good about it. That's just crazy.
I have nothing to add.
All right. So there you go. Roswell Hub, check them out if you haven't. If you're following this story and you haven't seen that, and you haven't seen their video. Graham Plattner is running for U.S. Senate in Maine, and he has racked up a lot of union endorsements very early, which is very surprising because unions are very small c conservative institutions politically, right? What do I mean by that? I mean that unions are not going to be on the leading edge of very many kind of political movements or challenging challenging incumbents that there's a chance the incumbent might win. I mean, it's just not really. And to illustrate that point, the Machinists Union, which is one of the unions that have endorsed Graham Plattner, had up until 2020 always endorsed Susan Collins. Right. And this is not because the Machinists Union is a particularly conservative union, right? I mean, they're just kind of a normal union. They almost always endorse Democrats, but they'll endorse Republicans where they think it makes sense. And they have always endorsed Susan Collins, the Republican from Maine, right? Not just the establishment Democrat, but the Republican from Maine. So the Machinists Union is one of these unions that have lined up behind Graham Plattner. But just generally, unions are not the type to kind of come out and challenge the status quo politically. I mean, right, Adam? I mean, they're just the unions. The labor movement is a pretty small C conservative institution.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, people make assumptions, but I think often the safest bet is probably the route they're going to take.
Right.
Realistically. It varies from union to union. Some are a little more conservative than others. Some are a little more adventurous than others. And a lot of that goes back to the structures of the unions themselves and like how these decisions are made, to what extent rank and file are involved, all those kinds of dynamics. But yeah, generally, I would agree with your assessment that often it's going to be kind of a play it safe route.
Yeah. And so endorsing Graham Plattner, especially when these unions did, I mean, most of these unions endorsed Graham Plattner back in October of last year, right? So after Janet Mills, the current governor of Maine, had announced that she was running. And so the safe choice would have been endorsing the sitting governor of Maine. If you're not going to endorse Susan Collins, then the safe choice would be endorsing Janet Mills. The unions decided not to do that. They decided to endorse Graham Plattner. Those unions specifically and minimally are the United Auto Workers, the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, IFPTE, National Nurses United, the nurses union in Maine, the Machinists Union, International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And I think that's it for the big, I think he may have had some local union endorsements, but those are the big internationals that have endorsed him. And so it's one thing, like, it is unique and interesting for so many people in the labor movement, for so many unions in the labor movement to be endorsing this guy who's really, sort of the underdog, although now, I mean, he's really walloping, it seems to me, Janet Mills in the polls, but he certainly started as an underdog. And so very interesting for unions to be endorsing him at all. But now reporting is coming out in NBC News that most of these unions, in addition to endorsing him, are directly pressuring Chuck Schumer to get his ass out of Maine and stop supporting Janet Mills. Which is crazy, super, super interesting dynamics at play here. This is from NBC. Union leaders in recent days have urged Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee to end their support for Governor Janet Mills in Maine's Senate primary, pointing to what they see as her weaker record on labor. Sean Fain, specifically, had a conversation with Schumer this month to discuss the race, among other topics, and said that Fain discussed with Schumer what he views as the, quote, shortcomings in the Democratic leader's approach to the 2026 midterms, particularly their failure to adequately listen to working-class voters. Fain cited the Maine contest as an example. Separately, on Monday, Michael Monahan, the international vice president of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers for the 2nd District, which includes Maine, sent a letter to DSCC leadership, obtained by NBC News, quote, to express our deep concern regarding the DSCC's ongoing involvement in the 2026 Maine Democratic Senate primary. We strongly urge the DSCC to refrain from intervening further in this primary. Your committee's support for Janet Mills is troubling to our membership for several reasons. I mean, pretty frank communication here from the unions. They point out how Plattner is polling ahead. A University of New Hampshire poll conducted in mid-February found Plattner with a 38-point lead over Mills among likely Democratic primary voters, well beyond the survey's margin of error. The Mills campaign disputed the survey, pointing to other recent misses the survey had in Maine and arguing that the sample, which skewed much younger than the past Maine electorates, did not accurately reflect the state. But let's see. So the NBC article also points out David Sullivan, the union's general vice president of the International Association of Machinists. He told NBC News that he is set to have a Zoom call with the DSCC to discuss the race next week. He said his membership was upset about Democratic leaders backing Mills after his union had endorsed Plattner. So I called my people in D.C., Sullivan said, and said Schumer needs to stay out of Maine. They said they were going to stick by their guns and they were going to put millions of dollars in for Janet Mills. We're going to fight this all the way. Kind of, yeah, bonkers. But so they highlight some of Mills' problems with labor. One of them, the Mills campaign said, oh, well, I've done a lot of good things. She increased the minimum wage. She boosted worker safety standards and prohibited employers from retaliating or discriminating against workers who reported them for violating labor laws. But she pointed to a 2022 endorsement from the Maine AFL-CIO, which, if you've got to point to an endorsement from 4 years ago, I think that your labor cred may, has a little bit to be desired. They point to some clashes she's had with organized labor. In 2019 and 2021, she vetoed labor-backed measures aimed at strengthening the power of a third party's rulings in disputes over public sector workers' wages, insurance, and retirement. So she vetoed that. And I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, that she also vetoed legislation that would have given farm workers the right to organize in Maine. Let me Google that real quick to make sure that I'm not spreading misinformation. So it's very interesting to see the labor movement being so behind. Yes, she did. So Maine Governor Janet Mills vetoed that bill in June of 2025, which would have protected farm workers' right to discuss working conditions and organize without retaliation. She said the legislation was overly complicated and burdensome for agricultural employers. And she's wondering why she's having difficulty garnering union support. So, interesting story I thought I would bring to y'all this week. Let's see. We're right at 12 o'clock. And I don't know. That might be it. Adam, is there anything else that you wanted to get to? I don't know that there's, I've got a couple of other things that I could talk about here, but it might be good to let them marinate a little bit and be able to speak on them, do a little bit more prep for them.
Yeah, if you'd rather go that route, that's totally fine. I know we had some reactions to the BLS numbers, to some economic news, to the State of the Union, but we can definitely digest that and sit on it for next week. And I've appreciated the conversations today, and I'm just really feeling some type of way today, given the news around the world. So I don't have just a whole lot more to say.
All right. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857. Free American in the chat says, good show, guys. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I think we had some good stuff today. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap it a little bit early. Adam's got something that he's got to go to momentarily, and so do I. I've got something at like 1:15, and so this will give me a chance to eat lunch before I've got to be where I've got to be. So appreciate everybody staying tuned. Yeah, it was. Did you have something else?
Yeah, just don't forget, y'all, Selma, this weekend coming up here in Alabama. There will be a lot of folks down there. Hope to run into you. If not, you can check out my webinar on Tuesday night through Alabama Arise. And a final plug for those labor notes trainings, some really great stuff on offer in March. Share those around, send those to members in your local. If you've got workers that you know that are interested in organizing, send them that link. You never know what could come of that. And so I know I constantly annoy people with text messages and emails, sending them trainings and workshops, but you just never know. And sometimes it plants a seed that can grow. So want to just make that final pitch. And thank you everyone for your support, for liking the stream, for watching, listening, participating in the chat. Make sure to share our stuff throughout the week and let people know about what we're trying to do. And as always, we love your voicemails and appreciate those. So do leave us a voicemail throughout the week. Let us know your reactions and what's going on in your neck of the woods.
All right. We'll see y'all next week.